It's about time I had authentic conversations about conversations I avoid. Acacia, Thorny Conversations.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we be up, standing, as we observe a moment of silence? Not my words, but these were the words that boomed over the stadium speakers just before an important soccer game happened. The reason is because a soccer player had just lost his life not too long ago, and now before the whole spectacle began all over again, they needed to pause and celebrate the life of one of theirs who was lost. Something deep within the human heart knows that life is so important that when it is lost, we cannot just go on with life or business as usual. Something within us knows it is important to respect life. But what did you think if I told you that every single day, every year for that matter, 40 million lives, you heard me right, 40 million lives are lost. But the tragedy is this, unlike the situation with the soccer game, not a single minute of silence is observed for these particular lives. Why? It is because many of them are lost in some backstreet clinic or lost in some God forbidden place. I'm speaking about lives that have been lost courtesy of abortion. Not the mother's lives, but the lives of the fetus or the babies that have been aborted. My name is Saya, and I'm here to have an authentic conversation with you. I call this Acacia, an acronym that means authentic conversations about conversations I avoid. If you please, you can replace I with you, because let's face it, there are many things in life we like to avoid. There are many strategies we use to avoid them, but they are touchy topics. There's some no-go zones that we walk around. And in our journey of faith, this continuous process of avoiding has made us either have a second-grade faith or altogether doubt in God. And the whole point of this series is to be able to candidly talk through some of these important issues, walk up behind away from our masks and be able to confront them as they truly are. So come with me today as we look at abortion. Now, I will not pretend that this is an easy topic, otherwise it will not form part of this thorny conversation. By the time a lady is making the decision to discharge the womb from the comfort of the womb, a fetus that has been growing or is already growing there, it's a monumental decision. It is a decision that is arrived at by many push and pull factors. Some just feel that they're not ready for the inconvenience of raising up a child. Maybe they were still enjoying the fun life and this pregnancy seems to come in the way. Yet not all in that case. Some got themselves pregnant because of abuse. Maybe it was a case of rape or of incest. Or some are just had more children than they can be able to raise and they do not feel that they are ready for the burden of additionally adding children. In other cases, there are more complex issues at play. There's a lot of pressure, both from within and often from without. Maybe the father of the child has exerted pressure, denied the child. Maybe the parents to the girl have completely ostracized her from society, and she feels the only way to be reintegrated back is to discharge this. Granted, I'm not excusing, I'm just explaining the various factors, the push and pull that happens when people are arriving to make the decision about abortion. Statistics show that most abortion cases do happen in developed countries, but the same statistics are quick to admit that the exact figures of abortion that happen both in developed and in developing countries cannot be accurately compiled simply because this is often an act that is done secretly or at times very not reported because of the stigma or of the illegality around it. Ever since America legalized abortion in 1970s, the rate of abortions has gone literally off the roof. But let's talk about this candidly, because this is not just an issue affecting non-Christians or people out there in the world. This is an issue that's probably affecting you or somebody close to you. Abortion. What does the Bible say about human life? Certainly, people will be quick to remember that in Psalms 139, perhaps one of the most elaborate descriptions about the formation of human life within the womb of a mother. The Bible, in the words of the psalmist, has these words to say. He uses acronyms like, you have knitted me in the womb of my mother. You have formed my frame while I was still in the womb. The psalmist here seems to acknowledge the fact that life begins at some stage while the fetus is still within the womb. Now, I know that is up for discussion and up for debate whether you are pro-life or you're pro-choice. But let the Bible just have its say, and then we can be able to look at the various other divides that do exist in this particular debate. In the almost immortalized words that God spoke to this prophet Jeremiah, in the book of Jeremiah chapter 1, he says, "Before I formed you in the womb of your mother, I knew you. And I chose you to be my prophet or my servant to the nations," adding credence to the fact that the Bible seems to suggest that God has a knowledge of human beings way before they appear in the nursery or way before they are delivered. God has a knowledge of the human beings. So the Bible suggests very strongly that human life begins at some point post-conception while still within the mother's womb. It has therefore led the church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church included, to be able to strongly hold the fact that human fetus, the unborn child, needs to be protected and needs not to be needlessly discharged from the comfort of the womb. We have two main camps in this entire abortion debate. There is pro-choice and there is pro-life. Let me explain what they are. The pro-choice people say the mother who bears the child should be given the choice, the freedom to choose whether to keep the baby or not. Maybe often informed that not all pregnancies are acquired by a willing mother or a prepared mother. The pro-choice people have pushed the fact and put at the forefront of the decision of whether an unborn baby lives or dies into the hands of the mother. Standing on almost the exact opposite side is the pro-life team, which says that human life is inherently given by God and that the mother should not be the only deciding factor when it comes to making the decision about whether this child will live or whether the child should die. They suggest that the fetus or the unborn baby needs to be protected at all costs, that life needs to be preserved. They seem to stand and say they need to be the voice to the voiceless fetus that is growing within the mother. Now, both camps have both pros and they have cons. And what we need to do in this authentic conversation is to look at both of them. I have already alluded to the fact that not all pregnancies are acquired by a willing or a prepared mother, or definitely not in circumstances that people feel entirely comfortable. But let's break this down a little bit more. I know of stories about children who've been betrothed when they're 10 years old, and at times, very sadly, to people who are multiple times their age. So a 12-year-old married to a 40-something or a 50-year-old person, and this child bears another child at a time when both of them are not ready. And pro-choice people seem to suggest that such a child should be given a choice on whether to keep the child or not. And then the cases of rape, which makes the pro-choice people suggest, like, no, in the case of rape, the mother should be given the choice to either keep the baby or not. But I come from Kenya. We speak Swahili. And in one of the Swahili sayings, it is said, to loosely translate it, it says, it is not the child who is illegitimate, it is the act that may be illegitimate, but the child cannot be legitimate. Therefore, the pro-life people say that regardless of how the child was acquired, life needs to be preserved. That children who are otherwise branded initially unwanted have often come out and become something of a spectacle. They've been able to achieve way more. That we never know who we are killing. We may be killing the next president, the next scientist, the next inventor, the next preacher who will be able to bring souls to God. So that we cannot take upon ourselves and arrogate upon ourselves the duties and responsibilities that are only God. So whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, I think what we need to have is a sincerely authentic conversation about this whole thing. Number one is prevention always beats cure. So in any case where any person can be able to avoid getting pregnancy, the better. The perfect way to avoid getting pregnancy that you do not want is do not have sex. This also includes, this speaks, with sensitivity to individuals who have been forced upon. But this step number one is for individuals outside the realm of marriage to begin strongly considering the whole issue of avoiding sex, because it takes sex to get pregnant. And then when the pregnancy kicks in is when we begin having discussions about, should I keep it? Should I not keep it? So the first step should be to try and look at that. But secondly is to be able to think, what happens way beyond the abortion? It is perfectly possible to sort out the biological, the physiological bit of it. But how many of us have really thought through about what happens to the mother emotionally? I have friends who, having committed abortion years ago, still struggle with the trauma of it. Some of them cannot be able to stand looking at or hearing the sound of a little child because they say it still keeps haunting, it still keeps traumatizing them. These are often things that do not come to the surface when people are talking about pro-choice or pro-life. The mother's life way beyond committing of the act. In the past, there have been many attempts to be able to address this. But I think as we go forward, we need to become more honest. We need to become more candid about speaking and addressing this issue of abortion. So what are three things, before I even look at the three things, what does a church, and what, in addition to what the Bible, what does a church really think about this? Number one, as a church, we believe in freedom of choice. And I'm not saying we are pro-choice, but I believe in the freedom of choice, that men are made and created as free moral agents with the ability to choose one way or the other, for God or against God, and that solemnity needs to always be able to be preserved. That notwithstanding, the church also does recognize the biblical presence that life is given of God and only God can be able to take it. However, there are situations where abortions can be permissible. These are where there is open, clear, medically proven harm to the mother or to the baby by the retention of the baby, such as complications, malformities, deformities, or if the baby is already dead or dying, it may be necessary to invoke medical procedures to save either the baby or the mother or both in such circumstances. However, often when we're talking about pro-choice or pro-life, we're not talking about these situations where there is medical risk at hand. We're talking about properly well-breathing, well-formed children. Should they be discharged? Should they not be discharged? The church promotes the idea that it is not matter how you became pregnant. What matters then now is, what do you do beyond this choice? What do you do beyond this step? Two wrongs will not make a right. Murder will not make you correct. But what can you practically do if you found yourself in this situation? There are three things you could do. Number one is consider single parenting. Many societies are increasingly warming up to the idea of a single parent. I know this is not God's ideal. God's perfect ideal is that a child should be raised up in a home where their loving parents are both existing. But we do recognize this is not always possible, such as in the case of deadbeat fathers. So to mean fathers who make girls pregnant and take no responsibility and go away. So rather than aborting and risking the risks to both to health and to mental health, it could be advisable for a lady to go through and have the child and consider single parenting. What needs to be given as a disclaimer here is two things. Number one, if you're making this decision, you need to be able to get a lot of support from your family and your home. I know this is not always forthcoming, but God is able to bring people around you who will be able to anchor you well. Number two, for the healthy upbringing of the child, you will need to be able to introduce father figures in their life. This often traditionally will be available in the form of brothers or uncles or fathers or grandfathers. But where this is not feasible, you may be able to consider what the community can be able to produce. And by community, I believe individuals within your church circles, individuals within the society you exist within could be able to step in and provide the father figure role in the event you're choosing to be a single parent. Please, may I remind us again that God's ideal is not for single parenting. It is for the children to be able to grow in a well-balanced, well-regulated family that has both the father and the mother. But recognizing that this is not always true, this is not always feasible, this is not always the case, rather than a both, you may want to consider option number 1, which is single parenting. Option number 2 is you may want to consider adoption. This option is becoming less and less popular, but still exists on the table. Mothers can be still encouraged to be able to go through with a childbearing, and if for whatever reason either they're not able to maintain the child, they got this child in ways that they do not feel was agreeable, they can be able to give up the child for adoption, so that this child is given the chance to be able to live, the chance to be able to thrive, the chance to be able to survive, that would otherwise be denied from them automatically should they have been aborted. You may need to be able to walk through to an adoption agency, and increasingly in every country, there are better laws and clearer procedures for giving up people for adoption. So as the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Many mothers perish in abortion clinics. Many children are also being killed in abortion clinics because their parents, their grandparents, and the people around them are not aware that this second option of adoption does exist, and that if well leveraged can be able to offer and afford an opportunity. So option number 1 would be to consider single parenting. Option number 2 would be to consider getting through with a child and giving it up for adoption. What is clear in all this abortion debate is after we have discussed the morality or the lack of morality, after we've swung from one pole to the other pole, what is clear is needed is we need to, number 1, examine our morals generally as a society. In a world where cases of abuse sexually are increasing, we need to step back and ask ourselves, what could we do more to be able to fight against the vice of sexual abuse so that we may be able to cut back on the number of people who are getting pregnant unwillingly. Number 2, it speaks to us needing to empower both the men and the women more, so that the men can be empowered to be able to take more responsibility, to be able to be ready for being fathers by the time they are choosing to go down the road of sexual engagement. Because it is not just the biological potential that one should consider. People should be able to think about the whole holistic thing. So once we've been able to address the abortion debate from a purely moralistic view, we need to come back and see it from a purely social view also, and see how are we equipping our men, how are we equipping our ladies in this respective society. And then number 3, we need to be able to think about the general social structures and the social fabric that we have been building and are building around ourselves one by one. Because many of the girls who are dying, many of the girls who are dying internally because of considering abortion or under immense pressure, will be able to thrive if we just understood, or if we gave them a little bit more help, more support. Now please understand, help and support is not condoning the act. Help and support is an extension of God's grace through us to the sufferers, so that we do not continue the culture of this particular cycle going on and on. Let me give you a personal story. I'll redact the name because this is people I know. I came to know a girl in life who, over time, because of my years of speaking, who unfortunately became pregnant. And what's more unfortunate is the father of the child became deadbeat, as they say. He did not take responsibility. In street English, we say it was a case of hit and run. The father basically got the girl pregnant and just took over. This had been somebody who was active in church, and a moment of misjudgment, a moment of miscalculation, a night of engagement and passion is all it took for her to get herself into this mess. So by the time I got to know about the pregnancy, she'd been toying with all particular options, including abortion. It took quite some convincing. It took quite some push and pull to be able to suggest, like, you know what, maybe you need to rethink. Maybe you need to stay in there and keep through. And in whichever way I could, either through the phone or text and everything, provided as much support and as much reassurance as I could through this particular journey. It wasn't easy for them to be able to go through this. They couldn't stand the fact that the man responsible for this was busy just living his life and going all the way scot-free, while she had to go through the shame and the abuse and the being ostracized because of this. But we pulled through, and by God's grace, she made the decision to stay with the baby. And when eventually the child came through, I want to assure you, I have watched her life change. I have seen her become adult. I've seen her become mature. I have seen her become responsible. I have seen her getting love and being strengthened. And the child, even if now barely 7 years old, is clearly a leader. The child loves the things of God and is clearly leading in those respects. There are many nights I go down thinking, what if? What if she had gone the easy, quick fix route, and it would have been justifiable, at least in the eyes of some in the world, for her to go the route of discharging this fetus from her womb. What if she had done that? She would have missed the chance to be a mother. Should have missed the chance of seeing what even she could become had she not made this particular decision. And I wonder how many more in the heat of the moment imagine and think things through this way. There's an English word called wisdom. It means many things to different people, but I want it to mean what it means to me from the Bible. The biblical understanding of wisdom is the ability to act today as though it were tomorrow. If today was tomorrow, if now was after, what would you do? Think about it. Just before you walk into that abortion clinic or before you discharge some money and lead somebody in that way, what if this person you're about to kill is the next president? What if this person you're about to destroy is the individual who, fine, they may never grow to have been a musician or grown to be something significant or known or popular in the world, but that just by the work of you raising them up, it would have helped you mature, it would have helped you become stronger. What if we became a society that looks at things a bit differently? What if we became a society that is less at pointing fingers and more at supporting? Maybe this will not stop all the 40 million deaths this year, but if it only helps prevent one more death, I think it's worth the while. And you do not need to look around and wonder, I want that other person to stop or want that other person to stop. What at times is required is that I need to become the difference that I want to see in the world. 40 million deaths have happened in the years past. We need to stop them from happening. We need to walk the paths of wisdom. We need to understand that there are options, that single parenting, when well supported, can actually thrive. That adoption as an option gives options for the mother to maintain her sanity and to also give opportunity for the unborn child to be able to live out its full and total potential. We need to go back to our societies and be able to deeply question about the way we are raising ourselves morally, whether the men or the women, and to be able to look at the support structures that exist within our societies and what can be done to make them look and even feel better. My country, Kenya, was gripped with a sad incident just a few months back. A human rights activist went missing. And at times our human rights record has not been good. And at that very moment we thought maybe the government has had a hand in this, because this was a person heavily involved in following up about extrajudicial killing. And sure enough, a few days later, this individual showed up dead, simply to mean she was found dead and dumped at some place. Of course, the initial rumors were the government is in this, the police have probably killed somebody who was hot on their trail. But then as the investigations went about, it was soon found out that this was a case of another abortion that has gone bad, that went wrong. The short message trail confirmed the same and uncovered many unpleasant things. My focus here will not be on what could have been of the unborn child. My focus here would really be, imagine what would have been if this mother would have still remained alive. She did take an unhealthy abortion. She did die because of the abortion. But she had been a person known in the community, fighting for something just, something worthwhile. Yet imagine somebody who was able to stand toe-to-toe with the government, to look eyeball to eyeball with police and ask them to stop extrajudicial killing, still at a moment of need did not have sufficient internal courage to go through with the pregnancy that she had and chose the quicker route of killing it. Imagine the suspense that the country was held in. But put all of that aside and imagine how much more good could have been done by her, through her, and for her had she been kept alive up to this moment. So the more we speak about this, it's not just purely a morality issue, it's a social issue. It speaks to our inner conscience. It's no wonder a topic we all like to avoid because it's thorny, because it speaks about me and my judgment behavior. It speaks about you and your indifference to the society, and especially to girls and to women who found themselves in this position. Jesus spoke and said, "The thief comes but to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly." So in this whole abundant life matrix, it's not enough that we just speak about preserving the life of the unborn. It is also about the question of the support we give to the mothers who have to soldier through, at times, pregnancies they did not bring upon themselves, but they want to soldier through. Let's give them all the support. Let's give them all the information. Let's give them all the Christ-like love so that not one other life needs to be needlessly lost. We continue with authentic conversations in our next time, and we keep engaging and we keep moving on with this. Until next time, I want to ask you this. Are you about to do an abortion? Are you about to encourage somebody to do an abortion? Step back. Rethink it again. Are you pointing a finger at somebody who's about to do an abortion? Step back and ask yourself, have you done all to be able to support them so that they can be all that God ever wanted them to be? My name is Saya, and this is Acacia, authentic conversations about conversations you and I avoid. Till next time, God bless you.